Summers in Pine Ridge were always hot and dusty, the kind of heat that made the air feel thick and heavy, where every breath seemed to take a little more effort. The dirt roads would kick up clouds of dust with every passing car, settling on everything in a fine, gritty layer. The sun beat down on the cornfields, making the air shimmer like a mirage. The heat waves would dance over the fields, creating an almost magical, otherworldly effect. It was as if the cornfields were alive, breathing in the intense summer heat. I was a quiet kid, more comfortable with the rustling leaves than with noisy children. While other kids played and shouted, I found solace in the gentle whispers of the wind through the trees. The forest was my sanctuary, a place where I could be alone with my thoughts and dreams. My family lived on a farm just outside the sleepy town. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, where the hustle and bustle of the outside world felt like a distant memory. Our farm was a world unto itself, a place of hard work and simple pleasures. We had a big old farmhouse surrounded by fields and woods. The house creaked and groaned with age, but it was home. The fields stretched out as far as the eye could see, a sea of green and gold that changed with the seasons. The woods were a mystery, a place of endless adventure and discovery. I loved exploring the woods and fishing in the creek that ran through our property. Each day was a new adventure, a chance to discover something new. The creek was my favorite spot, a place where I could sit for hours watching the water flow and the fish darting about. It was my escape, my own little world where I didn't have to worry about making friends or fitting in. In the woods, I could be myself, free from the pressures and expectations of the outside world. It was a place of peace and tranquility where I could lose myself in the beauty of nature.
And so, each summer day, young Drake found solace in the serene beauty of Pine Ridge. The days were long and lazy, filled with the simple joys of childhood. Fishing by the pond, exploring the woods, and lying in the grass, watching the clouds drift by, crafting memories that would last a lifetime. These were the days that shaped who he was, the moments that would stay with him forever. The summers in Pine Ridge were more than just a season. They were a time of growth, discovery, and endless possibility.
Other kids my age were always off playing tag or riding bikes, not me. I preferred the company of the frogs and crickets by the creek. My fishing pole was my best friend. I'd spend hours by the water, patiently waiting for a bite. One day, a curious beagle started joining me on my fishing trips. His name was Zippie, and he belonged to our neighbor, Mr. Brubaker. Zippie was a playful pup with floppy ears and a tail that wagged non-stop.
And so, with Zippie by his side, young Drake's fishing adventures became even more special.
Mr. Brubaker was a kind old man with a head full of white hair and a heart full of stories. He was the kind of person who seemed to have a piece of wisdom for every situation, and his eyes always twinkled with a mix of mischief and kindness. He'd often sit with me by the creek, a serene spot where the water flowed gently and the trees whispered secrets in the breeze, teaching me how to bait a hook and cast my line just right. His hands, though aged, moved with the precision of someone who had spent a lifetime perfecting his craft. Mr. Brubaker knew everything about fishing. He could tell you the best spots to fish, the right time of day, and even the type of fish you were likely to catch. He taught me which bait to use for different fish, explaining how each type of fish had its own preferences and habits, and how to tell when a fish was about to bite. He'd say, "Feel the tension in the line, Drake. It's like a conversation between you and the fish."
The trick, young man, is to be patient and quiet, to let the world around you settle and accept you as part of it, to become part of the scenery. Only then will the fish come to you, trusting that you are not a threat. And remember, there's always a big one that got away. It's not about the fish you catch, but the stories you create along the way.
With Mr. Brubaker's guidance, young Drake learned not just about fishing, but about life itself. He learned the value of patience, the importance of being present in the moment, and the joy of sharing stories. Each fishing trip was a lesson in resilience and understanding, a chance to connect with nature and with each other. Mr. Brubaker's wisdom extended far beyond the creek, shaping Drake into a thoughtful and compassionate young man. And as the sun set over the creek, casting a golden glow over the water, Drake knew that the memories and lessons from those days would stay with him forever, guiding him through the currents of life.
One afternoon, Mr. Brubaker, Zippie, and I decided to try our luck at a different fishing spot. We had heard whispers about this place for years, a hidden gem that promised adventure and mystery. It was a secluded pond deep in the woods, a place shrouded in local legends, the kind of place that seemed to exist only in stories, where the air was thick with the promise of the unknown. Mr. Brubaker told me stories of giant catfish and mischievous water spirits. His eyes would light up with a twinkle of mischief as he recounted tales of fishermen who had come face to face with the pond's legendary inhabitants. We packed a picnic basket full of sandwiches and lemonade, making sure we had enough to last us through the afternoon. The sandwiches were carefully prepared by Mrs. Brubaker, who always insisted on adding a special touch to each one, and set off on our adventure. The path to the pond was not well trodden, and we had to rely on Mr. Brubaker's memory and a few old markers to guide us. The air was thick with the smell of pine needles and damp earth. Every step we took seemed to stir up the rich, earthy scent of the forest, a reminder of the life teeming beneath our feet. Sunlight dappled the forest floor, creating a mosaic of light and shadow that danced with every rustle of the leaves above. As we made our way to the hidden pond, the journey was as much a part of the adventure as the destination, each step bringing us closer to the heart of the forest.
This place has its own magic, lad. Mr. Brubaker's voice was filled with a reverence that made me believe in the magic he spoke of. Let's see what the day brings us. His words were a promise of the unknown, a challenge to embrace whatever lay ahead.
And so, with hearts full of anticipation, we continued our journey. The excitement was palpable, a shared feeling that bound us together in that moment. They embarked on an unforgettable afternoon, one that promised to be filled with the kind of memories that last a lifetime, one that would be etched in young Drake's memory forever. The sights, sounds, and smells of that day would stay with him, a reminder of the magic that can be found in the simplest of adventures. As we reached the pond, we set up our fishing rods, each of us eager to cast our lines into the mysterious waters. The pond's surface was calm, with only the occasional ripple breaking the stillness. It felt like we were intruding on a secret world. Young Drake's eyes were wide with wonder, taking in every detail of the pond and its surroundings. Mr. Brubaker patiently showed him how to cast his line, his hands steady and sure. We sat by the pond, waiting in silence, each of us lost in our own thoughts. The anticipation was almost tangible, a shared feeling of hope and excitement. Suddenly there was a tug on one of the lines. The excitement was electric as we all sprang into action. Together, we worked to reel in the catch, our hearts pounding with the thrill of the moment. When we finally pulled the fish from the water, it was a moment of triumph, a shared victory that we would all remember. We celebrated with our picnic, the sandwiches and lemonade tasting even better after our adventure. The laughter and stories we shared that afternoon were the perfect end to an unforgettable day. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the pond, we packed up our things and made our way back through the forest. The journey back was filled with a sense of contentment, a feeling that we had experienced something truly special. Young Drake's face was filled with happiness, a reflection of the joy and wonder he had felt that day. And as we walked into the distance, fading into the sunset, I knew that this was a day we would all cherish forever. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the water, we settled down to fish. The air was still, and the only sounds were the chirping of crickets and the occasional splash of a fish jumping for its dinner. Suddenly, Zippie started barking. He pointed his nose at the sky and whined, his tail between his legs.
We looked up and gasped. A strange, glowing object was hovering above the pond. It was disc-shaped, with pulsating lights all around it. It moved silently, like a giant firefly in the twilight sky.
We were frozen in place, our mouths hanging open in shock. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the object shot down towards the pond. We braced ourselves for a crash, but there was nothing. Zippie, however, sprang into action. He leapt towards the spot where the object had disappeared.
He barked and barked, his little body trembling with a courage I didn't know dogs possessed.
We ran to the edge of the pond, our hearts pounding in our chests. "Zippie!" I screamed, my voice echoing through the silent woods.
Section 7, the night everything changed.
The water in the pond was still swirling, but Zippie was gone. We waited for what felt like an eternity, but there was no sign of him.
Mr. Brubaker and I looked at each other, our faces pale with fear.
"Zippie!" I shouted again, my voice cracking with panic.
Just then we saw him. Zippie came paddling back to the shore, shaking the water from his fur. He was soaking wet, but he was okay. We rushed to him, relief washing over us like a tidal wave. Section 8, Whispers and Wonder.
That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the image of the strange object from my mind. It seemed so real, so close, yet so impossible.
Mr. Brubaker wouldn't talk about it the next day. He just patted my head and said it was a story for another time.
But I knew what we saw, and I knew Zippie had seen it too. The experience left me with a sense of wonder and a burning curiosity about the mysteries that might be hidden beyond our world.
Section 9. A lifelong fascination.
That summer evening by the pond changed me. It sparked a lifelong fascination with the unexplained and the unknown. I devoured books about UFOs, alien encounters, and the paranormal. I joined the school's astronomy club and spent hours gazing at the stars, searching for any sign of unusual activity.
The memory of that night, the strange lights, and Zippie's bravery stayed with him. It was a secret he held close, a reminder that there's more to the world than what we can see and touch. Section 10. The truth is out there.
Now, years later, I'm a writer. I write stories about the strange and the unexplained, stories that explore the boundaries of reality. My childhood experience with the UFO continues to inspire me, reminding me to keep an open mind and to never stop questioning the world around us.
Some things, he believes, can't be explained, but that doesn't mean they didn't happen. And somewhere out there in the vastness of the universe, he likes to think Zippie's bravery that night might just have saved them from something truly extraordinary.